This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a good day out there today. Plenty to get to on today's show. Velle E, Neal III, Star Tribune columnist, will join me in a little while to talk Twins, to talk the Tyler Mahle injury, to talk about just kind of where this team stands down the stretch. Some good baseball insights from Velle. Got some thoughts from him, too, on Kirk Cousins and the Timberwolves. So look forward to that here in a little bit. Sammy Walker signing with the Wild. We'll get into that for a little while as well. And a big TV contract for the Big Ten, soon to be the Big 16. We'll get into that as well. But first, what did I miss? Got to start with DeShaun Watson. News Thursday that the league and DeShaun Watson's side settled on an 11-game suspension, $5 million fine. That's obviously more than what the original 6-game suspension handed down by an arbiter earlier this month. But biggest thing to me in all this is that even though this increases the penalty, even though this maybe takes things a little bit further, does not feel like anybody in this situation has learned a single thing yet. This was obviously a very serious case involving a lot of sexual misconduct allegations from massage sessions for DeShaun Watson. Now, 11-game suspension might seem like a lot, but I don't know if it goes far enough, and I certainly know that I don't like how it looks in the grand scheme of the season. So this is what the NFL didn't learn. If you look at the Browns' schedule this season, 11 games, they've got a bye week. Week 13, they go back to play Houston, DeShaun Watson's former team, on the road in Houston. So his first game back, his first game that he will be eligible to play this year will be a return to Houston. Now, I know the NFL loves its storylines. I know the NFL loves to, have these opening week games that have some drama, some implications. They love to kind of create these moments. This feels entirely too convenient and staged. That 11 games feels like an entirely, somewhere between arbitrary and fixed number of games for them to decide so that he can come back in time to play in that game, generate all sorts of interest, all sorts of intrigue going back to Houston. But, those sorts of things are fine if a player gets traded or signs in free agency, or if teams have a kind of a grudge against each other because they played in the Super Bowl. Some kind of on-the-field storyline, or even some sort of, drama off the field that doesn't get into any kind of legal situation, that is totally inbounds for creating some sort of drama. This, however, if this was intentional, and it sure feels like it was, that's just disgusting. It's gross to build some sort of moment out of DeShaun Watson's return from a suspension for sexual assault allegations and finding of wrongdoing. Speaking of not learning anything, DeShaun Watson put out a statement on Thursday basically saying, "I'm grateful that this disciplinary process has ended and extremely appreciative of the tremendous support I've received throughout my short time with the Browns organization. I want to apologize again for any pain the situation has caused. I take accountability for the decisions I made." And then, a little later on Thursday, he met with the Cleveland media and said he still maintains his innocence. Let's hear right now from DeShaun Watson.
I've always stood on my innocence and always said that I've never assaulted anyone or disrespected anyone, and I'm continuing to stand on that. But at the same time, I have to continue to push forward with my life and my career. And for us to be able to move forward, I have to be able to take steps and put pride to the side. And I'm going to continue to stand on my innocence and keep pushing forward. And I've always, stood on not disrespecting or sexual assaulting anyone.
Okay, what in the world is going on here? I don't know if he's not getting the right kind of coaching or if he's just, lost in his own head, trapped in his own head. But you can't put out that kind of statement. You can't have the allegations that he had and then say, I continue to stand on my innocence, and saying just because there was a grievance, just because they went through this process doesn't mean that I'm saying I did anything wrong. Interestingly enough, Browns co-owner Dee Haslam was asked about Watson's comments, And he said, "We respect his opinion. I do think in counseling, DeShaun will learn a lot more about himself." Well, I hope somebody learns something at this point, because I don't feel like the Browns have learned much at this point. They are way in on a guy who is going to miss most of this season and doesn't really seem like he has figured this out. They are in a league with the NFL that has set up some sort of gross comeback story for DeShaun Watson right after he gets off of the suspension. And the player himself doesn't feel like he's grown at all in any of this process. So maybe over the course of the next few months, some growth will take place. But you know what? I am not holding my breath.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, pre-mixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to mgmwineandspirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Really happy to be joined right now by Velle E. Neal III, columnist at the Star Tribune. Velle, I mostly want to talk Twins with you today, as we often do, and it's the big team that's in season right now. And interesting developments this week with the Twins sweeping the Royals, kind of righting the ship after that tough West Coast trip, especially that those last two games against the Angels, which really seem to set them back, but they seem to have recovered from that. But then the balancing news on Wednesday that Tyler Mahle, the pitcher they got from the Reds at the deadline, had to leave his start in the third inning. He's got some shoulder stuff going on. They don't seem terribly concerned about it, but how concerned would you be right now when you see a pitcher with a dip in velocity and a guy who right before he got traded did have basically 3 weeks off for what probably seems like a related, shoulder, fatigue or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, it's got to be a little concerning for the Twins, and it's unfortunate too because when the trade was made, Rocco Baldelli talked to the manager of the Reds, and the guy was like, he's a horse. He can go deeper in the games. He can go 3 times through the order. You look at his season. I think he's thrown 100 pitches like a dozen times or 13 times. Pitch it to the 7th inning several times. It's like he'd be that one guy that the Twins really could use to keep the bullpen out of games. Because when you have Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer in the same rotation, your bullpen's coming into games in the 5th inning, maybe a little bit earlier. And they needed someone to kind of help the bullpen out and save the Twins through those middle innings, which have become a rough spot for them because of starters not going deep enough and not having enough bullpen depth to get through that. So, and going forward now, how cautious is Rocco going to be using Mahle? If he ends up sitting out a week or two, and then ramping back up, coming back in September, is Rocco going to allow him to pitch deep? I think he's going to treat Mahle like everybody else now. I think he's going to be a guy that, he's going to take him out before 100 pitches and limit him to 2 times through the order, maybe a little bit. Maybe go a third time, a couple times, but that's not what the Twins signed up for when they made this deal, and it's really unfortunate because you like his stuff, you like his demeanor, and it looked like he was a guy who can give the Twins the innings that they needed. It's really a blow to them, and it's probably going to affect how they use him the rest of the season. So that's got to be frustrating on their end. The latest in the season worth of injuries. I mean, Bailey Ober hasn't pitched since early in the season. And Josh Weiner's been gone for a few months now. Guys who they've probably factored having some sort of role in the rotation here haven't been around. So because of injury. So they've had Sonny Gray's been on the DL twice. And
we talk about, even Chris Paddock. This is kind of like Chris Paddock all over again, where they trade for him before the season starts, and he'd had some problems before, but they were hoping that he could pitch through it, and it ends up that he's out for the year pretty quick after, just making a few starts for them, and then, kind of is a little bit of a deja vu from 2019 too, when they got Dyson from the Giants, and Dyson from the Giants, that was a relief pitcher, maybe not as high of a leverage move, but he gets hurt right away and doesn't pitch for them. He's never pitched again in the major leagues. So, this history of acquiring pitchers that end up having some problems right away has got to be a little bit troubling.
Yeah, I'm not going to put Mahle in the same category with Dyson and Paddock just yet.
No.
With Dyson, the Twins smelled a rat on that one and thought that San Francisco held back some information about his condition that they could have used to arrive at a conclusion. I think there's still some sore feelings over that one. Paddock has already had Tommy John surgery once, and that's on the Twins because other teams have saw his medical records. The Mets were inquiring about Paddock and saw his medical records and said, nope, we don't want this guy. Twins saw his medical records and said, okay, let's have him. And now Paddock has had a second Tommy John surgery, and that's going to be troublesome going forward because the history of pitchers with 2 Tommy John surgeries is not good. Mahle, yeah, he had to be shut down for 3 weeks early in the season, but you look at his record during the season, that it looked like he was healthy as a horse when the trade was made. So I think this one's more of a blindside than the other 2. So I'm not quite ready. It just seems like it's another injury issue in the list of them for the Twins when it comes to acquisitions and just from developing their own pitchers. They keep having guys break down on them. It's stopping the progress of this pitching organization that Derek Falvey was apparently putting in order here. It seemed like some of the guys that they drafted and developed were about to break through, like Winder and like Ober. But the injuries have stopped them. Jordan Balazovic has also had some injury history, and this year he's just pitching poorly. He had a decent outing yesterday with 4 innings for the Saints with no runs given up. But the word is that he's having trouble keeping the ball down, and this stuff is not as crisp as it has been in the past. So they're trying to figure out how to get Balazovic back to being the top pitching prospect he was a couple of years ago. So they've had a bunch of setbacks here. And once again, it underscores the belief that in order to come up with 3 good starting pitchers, you need to start with a group of 10 because stuff's going to happen to the other side.
Well, as of Thursday afternoon when we are recording, I was just looking at some interesting fan graphs, and the Twins don't play Thursday. They don't play again until Friday when they start that series with Texas, and then Cleveland and Chicago play each other over the weekend. So obviously someone's going to win there, someone's going to lose there, a chance to make up ground on somebody, but potentially lose ground on somebody else this weekend. Interesting fan graphs, does all sorts of projections. They kind of, every day they update it. And right now, all 3 of those teams are right around 50% for making the postseason. And the projected win totals of those 3 teams as of Thursday afternoon: Cleveland 84.8 wins, Chicago 84.7, Twins 84.6. It does not get much tighter than that. And, we've expected that in the division race probably for a while now. The Twins had a more comfortable, 4 or 5 game lead for a while, but it never felt entirely secure because Cleveland had the pitching, and the White Sox always seemed like they were going to make a move at some point. And now here we are. Based on what you've seen from this team right now, do they have enough to get to the finish line and win this division? And if so, how are they going to do it?
I still think the Twins should win this division. Not having a healthy Mahle is troublesome there because that gave him a third starter you can rely on, and now you're just down to
Sonny Gray and Joe Ryan.
Yeah, Joe Ryan. It was what happened. What's the phrase again? Ryan and Gray and TBA. They're back to that now with those 2 guys. It's unfortunate. If you tell me Mahle's going to be back in the rotation by early September, then I like their chances. I just don't know from a rotation standpoint how they can hang around with just 2 reliable pitchers here. So that's going to be a problem. But they should. Other than that, I mean, they're equipped to win the division. Their offense, should be better. I'm gonna have to write a column about Carlos Correa because he's not playing like a $35 million player.
No.
Buxton's had trouble making consistent contact. Polanco's had a bad month of August, and August historically has been his best month of the season. Jose Miranda's propped him up big time, but I still think they should be hitting enough to make some of these victories easier to come by, and we haven't seen a lot of that. but the other teams have their flaws too. Cleveland's offense is hit and miss. Although they got some nice young players, like Stephen Kwan looks like he's going to be a hitter. And Josh Naylor, he's getting through this season after almost, tearing up his leg last year at Target Field. And they've also got a decent, reliable pitching foundation. The White Sox, I was reading in the paper the other day out of Chicago. They are sitting there talking to themselves about, we took this for granted. We thought it'd be easy to win this division this year, and we have now played our best baseball. So, they've realized that they've been their worst enemy this year. So this division can still be had. All three of these teams are definitely flawed, but I still think the Twins have what it takes to win it. Although I'm troubled by the development with Tyler Mahle.
Yeah, that's troublesome indeed. I want to move on to a couple other subjects in a minute here, but one other thing that caught my eye that I looked up on Thursday. Fascinating to note right now that Emilio Pagan, the much maligned Emilio Pagan, now has a better earned run average than Taylor Rogers does right now. Taylor Rogers fallen off the face of the earth after a great start to the year. He's way down to 4.89 ERA. He's had a bunch of bad, really just blow up late inning outings. Pagan not much better at 4.87, but if you look at that trade, all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's, again, it's not, it didn't work out great for either team, and obviously Rogers got dealt again to the Brewers, but some of these decisions the Twins have made on guys like Taylor Rogers, guys like Jose Barrios, who's having a blow-up year in Toronto, he's given up a ton of home runs, ERA like 5.5. Doesn't seem I'm not as critical of them maybe as I was as when the moment arrived.
Yeah, that's what's making these deals not hurt as much because of the performances of definitely Rogers. Although Rogers always thought would be a good setup guy and just keep him out in the ninth inning, and maybe in that role he'd be a little more effective. But yeah, it's been kind of shocking to see what he's done after. I think in April he was just nails.
He was,
and after that he just went haywire. And Barrios touted himself as an ace in the making, and wanted to be paid like that. And I would have given. I think I would have offered. Funny thing, I would have offered Barrios a contract and ended up signing with the Blue Jays, but I don't think the Twins wanted to go there in terms of years of commitment. But his ERA has been flirting with 5 most of the season. I think
it's like 5.5 now.
The game he started with against the Twins was one of his best games of the season, and he's had trouble duplicating those outings. So, unfortunately, Austin Martin, the crown jewel of that trade, has not had a good year at all at Double-A Wichita. He's actually taken a step backward. His walk rates dropped, his batting averages dropped, and his extra base hits have decreased significantly. Simeon Woods Richardson now has passed him as a quality guy in return for Barrios. Simeon Woods Richardson just was promoted to the Saints here yesterday. Yeah, I was over at Saints Stadium yesterday when that happened for his first day there. So it would hurt. It would sting even more. And we're forgetting about. I think Brett Worker went with the Rogers to the Padres. I had no idea he was on the Royals roster somehow, and he helped gift the Twins a run yesterday. When Tommy Watkins knew he could run that arm because he didn't stop waving that.
Oh, he did not.
Home. He knew you could run a Rooker's arm. So, these trades could sting even more if the guys they gave away were performing better, but they have not. So the Twins are dodging a little bit of a bullet there.
Couple other things for you, Lavelle. One, the big story out of Vikings on Wednesday was the return of Kirk Cousins from the COVID list, but also getting kind of feisty in these joint practices with the 49ers. It sounds like he was swearing a little bit. Sounds like during Thursday's joint practices there was some mixing it up, some sideline skirmishes, not with Kirk Cousins, but with some of the other players. And these things will happen. But he sounded like he added an expletive to his trademark. You like that? Now, again, this is a guy who's been in the league for a decade. I don't expect him to start anything necessarily all that new. But are you buying anything different from Kirk Cousins right now with Kevin O'Connell in charge and maybe a different offensive approach?
Not yet. I got to see how the regular season starts and how he performs. But he's in a position for him to have a tremendous year. He's got the weapons around him offensively, and he's got an offensive-minded coach instead of Zimmer. who was not happy that Cousins was there in the first place because it forced them to cut some of his defensive guys in next year to balance the books. So I think he always resented. He looked at Kurt and always resented the fact that Kurt's presence led to other people's departures that he didn't want to see go. So I want to see how this plays out during the regular season, but it could be a good year for the guy. He's a football player. You know, I wasn't necessarily buying this poly purebred persona that he tried to go by, you know, in the public. So we saw a little bit of that other side. So, but I got to wait and see until regular season starts and we see how some of these games go, and we'll find out, week one, what Kurt's all about and what this offense can do.
How's your guy Roquan Smith doing?
I don't know. He's sitting there thinking he should be one of the highest paid linebackers in the league when he's not one of the best linebackers in the league. He's good, but not great. He's a side-to-side line tackling machine, and he does not make splash plays. He doesn't intercept the ball a lot. He doesn't get a lot of sacks. He could be used differently in this scheme. The other thing too is that he's playing to be the middle linebacker in this scheme now, and the Bears aren't sure how he's going to adapt to that switch. So I think that's another reason why they didn't want to give him top dollar. The rumor is they offered him $95 million. How much more does he need? You know?
No.
So I'm a little miffed at Roquan because everybody's fired up in practice. Matt Eberflus is running some grueling practices and has called out people for dogging it and has held guys accountable like Matt Nagy didn't. And everybody's buying into it. But we got one guy here, you know, who hasn't jumped into the fray, and that's Roquan Smith.
Brutal. The NFC North could be interesting this year, as can the Western Conference in the NBA. I want to get to some Wolves talk with you because the schedule came out Wednesday. Not that matters a whole lot, but you look at it, you're like, all right, 9 of the first 12 at home. They've got 16 national TV games this year, Lavelle. 16. That kind of shows you that they're gaining some of that juice from the national, in the whole landscape, from ESPN, from TNT. After the Rudy Gobert trade, I really look at this team and say, this is a team set up to win 50 games or more for a bunch of years in a row, but it's the Wolves. So I still, it's probably a little bit of wait and see, but this feels like a team that should be competitive and that should be, you look at the schedule, you just look at who else is in this conference, should be maybe a top 4 seed in the West. Are you buying that?
You have not arrived as an NBA team until you get the Christmas Day assignment. So once the Wolves start appearing on Christmas, then I'll buy into the fact that they're a top team. But no, Mike, I think that the Wolves should be a 50-win team in each of the next 4 years here. To build up for that, I think Gobert's presence is really going to do wonders for Cat because now he's going to be freed up to play his in and out type of game and not have to worry about guarding the basket or rim protecting all the time, maybe just part of the time. So, D'Lo is going to be an issue. How he adapts to the system, and that's going to be a challenge on Chris Finch to try to reel him in a little bit and continue to get him to be a two-way player. But I expect this to be a good team. The other thing, too, I really like the under-the-radar signing of Kyle Anderson, the 6'9" kid who played at UCLA. He's going to be a good, versatile piece coming off the bench. I think this team's going to be good. I think they go win 50 games, and they're definitely ascending up the rankings in terms of reputation in the league here.
I like you make a good point because I think a lot of their under the radar signings were good ones, especially Kyle Anderson. They made a couple other kind of edge moves like Bryn Forbes, just guys who, they've replaced some of their more expensive bench players and more expensive role players with guys who are, more that veteran minimum, and guys might start, maybe they kind of want to play here now because they realize this is a team that should be set up to win. And that is not been the case in the last 15 or so years.
No, and the Wolves are going to keep pushing forward here. Alex Rodriguez told me, he says, we want to be first class in everything we do. So they're going to try to continue to climb the charts here and add on to what they got. I'm a little stunned by their hiring of the announcer because I thought they would go after more of a seasoned, accomplished voice. The rumor was that they had Gus Johnson on their wish list as a home run hire, but they went the opposite direction. They got the sideline reporter from the Brooklyn. Last name is Grady. I can't remember his first name.
Michael Grady, yeah.
Michael Grady is coming over from Brooklyn. That's where he was mostly a sideline reporter. Did some play-by-play duties when he was filling in for Ian Eagle, who's one of the best in the business. So it should be pretty interesting to see and watch how he sails into the bit here. So, but we could continue to see changes with this organization that we hadn't seen, as recently as 2 or 3 years ago.
Always first class, Velle E. Neal III on Daily Delivery. Velle will check in again soon, all right?
All right. Thanks for having me.
A couple of postscripts to that excellent conversation with Velle E. Neal III. One, Tyler Mahle had an MRI on Thursday. Everything came back okay, which is probably as expected. He had an MRI in July with the Reds, and that too showed that there was no structural damage. So we'll see. His next start is scheduled for Tuesday in Houston, but Twins not confirmed yet. He'll make that start. Just reading right now from Phil Miller's story. So we'll see. We'll see if it's just a little bit of rest, if he needs to miss a start or two, if he doesn't miss a start at all, if things get better. We will see. But the fact that this has come up, the fact that he had to leave that start in the third inning is certainly concerning in and of itself. Also, I wrote on Thursday about the problems of Taylor Rogers and Jose Barrios. So, of course, Jose Barrios had one of his better starts of the year for the Blue Jays. They beat the Yankees 9-2. Barrios improves to 9-5 on the season, 6.2 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, only one of them earned, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, more of the Barrios the Jays are hoping to get. Lowered his ERA only, though, to 5.39. Still a pretty rough year for Jose Barrios. He's been touched up for a lot of home runs, did not give up a home run in that game. So good for Jose. Interesting for Twins fans to kind of monitor that, just kind of the what-ifs of it. And because the Blue Jays are a wild card contender, if that's what it comes down to for the Twins. But a good start from Jose Barrios as the Blue Jays routed the Yankees, who are somehow struggling mightily since the All-Star break. Let's get into the massive TV contract for the Big Ten, the massive media rights deal, $7 billion. Splitting up the football, 7 years, $7 billion media rights deal. Fox, CBS, and NBC will all have Big Ten games kind of slotted in at the various time slots, 11 o'clock, 2:30, and prime time during college football season, which goes into effect in 2023. So that's even a year before USC and UCLA get in. Gophers are going to eventually get basically double what they get right now from media rights. Could get up to $100 million in a year in media rights at a certain point here. But I think the coolest thing for the Big Ten is going to be that clean sweep of Saturday, having the Fox game at 11 a.m., the CBS game at 2:30, and then the NBC primetime game. That's going to give them, I think people have commented on this already, kind of give them kind of an NFL-style feel almost, where you've got that whole day covered on national television, prime games. So that's going to be a pretty cool thing for the Big Ten when that starts in 2023. Might be a little bit harder to watch basketball. I'm going to have to watch out for that because some of those games are going to be on Peacock. It's a streaming service you'd have to pay. That'd be an additional service there. So we'll see what kind of impact this has, but massive money we're talking about. The money's been in college sports for a long time. It's been in TV rights deals a long time, but this number, $7 billion over 7 years, takes things to another level, especially for the Big Ten. So what that impact has on the Gophers and the Big Ten can only mean kind of an escalation of this, arms race, this era of big spending in college sports. And I will be curious to see how much of that makes its way back to the players. Speaking of college sports, let's finish with the Coolers. Sammy Walker, Gophers hockey, signing with the Wild. Sammy Walker was a 7th-round pick a while back of the Tampa Bay Lightning, but did not sign with Lightning. Ended up being a college free agent, signing with the hometown Wild. So pretty cool news for Sammy Walker. Pretty cool for the Wild. He was a captain with the Gophers. It's a 2-year contract with the Gophers. He said, or with the Wild. I'm sorry. Said. Reading from the Star Tribune story, definitely was a little stressful, but definitely super exciting at the same time. Walker said, "I'm just super pumped to be able to sign with the hometown team." Walker, originally from Edina, could have come back for another year of eligibility because of the COVID year of eligibility granted to everybody, but sounds like he was ready to move on with his career, and he will be doing that with the Wild organization. That will do it for me today. Hope you enjoyed all of the shows this week. Have a great weekend. We'll be back at it again on Monday.